From my very first conference in the Pagoda Ballroom in Perth, Western Australia, it's been my dream to be able to plant a couple into the harvest field, into the mission field. In 2014, we planted Pat and Kathy Edwards, a local couple from our local congregation here into Hangzhou, China. They've built, they've come back again. This is their mission debrief. And I pray that God would stir your heart concerning your involvement in the mission enterprise.
Hello and welcome. In September 2014, the New South Wales Fellowship and the Parramatta Church launched Pastor Pat and Kathy into Hangzhou, China. Pastor Pat and Kathy had pioneered the church in Blacktown for the past 19 years, but in that conference felt the call of God to go into China. Tonight, we want to look at all that God did in and through their time there, and the aim of tonight is to inspire missionaries to go and answer the call of God. Welcome, Pastor Pat and Kathy. So, take us back to September 2014 and how the call to China happened.
Conference was beginning there in Blacktown, and I was trying to organise a time to have a coffee with Pastor Pete Staples, and we were just shooting the breeze, and he started to speculate about what might transpire at conference, and jokingly he said, you're going to go overseas. I'm like, no chance. There's no chance that will happen. The music fired up for the song service, and I made my way back in front of the stage to walk back to my seat, and God just whacked me. It was just like, why not? It was like, why not what? Why not you? Really? And he just shook my world, and by the time I got back to my seat, Kathy's sitting there, and I said, what about going to China? What if God calls us to China? It's like she knew totally that it was going to happen.
You knew before?
Well, 6 weeks before, we'd been to dinner after a rally with Pastor Corey and Sharon, and he just said, Pastor Walsh wants to send someone overseas. You could do it. You could be the couple that go. And Pat's like, well, I'd have to hear from God. And God said to me, yep, I want you to go. And so for the next 6 weeks, I was processing that and thinking, what about this? What about that? And talking to the children, what if we were to go? What if we were to go? Every time we saw Pastor Corey, he'd be saying, you guys. And Pat's like, nah, God have to speak to me. But so many little things were happening along that time. And even my time at home, I was feeling very comfortable. But I said, God, I don't want to be comfortable. I want to do what you want me to do. And so all these things were happening. And then, so by that night, I knew we were going to go.
And it was like I was the last one to know. She had 6 weeks to process it. I had 6 minutes at the beginning of the conference, and but God struck me, and I just knew I had to speak to Pastor Walsh and nail that down before I, talked my way out of it. And there was all the questions about what if, what about this, what about the house, what about this, what about the car, what are you going to do, what about the kids, their schooling, and all of those things. And my mind was just racing with that activity, and God was just smacking down all of those questions with satisfying answers. And so by the time it was done, it was like, I know what to do.
And they were the same questions that I'd asked God weeks before.
So once you made that choice, that God had spoken to you and the call was real, what happened then?
Well, that was on the Monday night of the conference, and I dealt with God at the altar call. I said, God, if you want me to go, then you need to cement this in. And God recreated what had happened 20 odd years before when we were launched into Blacktown, and I was just in awe. I spoke to Pastor Walsh the next day, and there was agreement there, and then we were going to be announced out on Thursday night. And once that issue was settled and the decision was made, it just becomes the most exciting thing. And you have a peace, but it's a buzz. It's like, we're going to pack up our house, we're going to do something new. And you just have that direction, and it's set. Peace gets in your heart, and very exciting.
So by January 2015, you're on your way to China and you took your youngest daughter Louise with you, but you had to leave behind your 3 older children. How did you process this?
Look, that's obviously a very difficult thing. For me, I had a house full of clutter and I'm packing up the stuff last minute. You know, it should have been done weeks before, but I'm stressing. And I didn't really spend that time just with family. But that was like the most worrying thing to me, was leaving the family. But I knew it. We'd always raised our children to know we could go anywhere at any time. You know, so deep down, I knew that was all going to be okay, but in reality, the way it played out, I was stressed to the last minute. And then, you know, I really only spent a little bit of time with the children I was leaving behind, because I was worrying about the one I was taking away and her leaving her friends and stuff. So there was a lot of things that went on that were difficult, but we knew God had called us. I knew God would look after the children. So that was a difficult thing, the actual leaving. And the other thing was I was about to have grandchildren. So when God spoke that first night that we would go, I just found out that Claire was going to have a baby. And so my whole dreams had been to be present at maybe the birth or to help out with grandchildren. And I had to totally take those dreams and just take them away and say, God, you knew.
Yeah.
You knew. And I had to lay them down straight away. I couldn't worry. I couldn't hold on to that. I couldn't do anything. I knew I had to just put it down immediately. And it was the same even when Louise left us 2 years later and we were empty nesters. It was exactly the same thing I had to do. I cried that day, but I had to take hold of those thoughts.
Video calls, of course, make it easier. Hudson Taylor never had Skype. Can't imagine what it would have been like. But you still feel the distance.
Yeah.
You still sense that, you know, when something's going on with your family back home, you can't just reach out. You can't give a hug. But as Kathy said, we raised our family to obey the call of God. And so we all, you know, I guess, swallowed hard and knew that this was God.
So it's difficult to summarise 6.5 years into a short interview, but can you tell us what are some of the highlights and the God moments you experienced in China?
For me, the highlights are obviously to do with people and you know, people getting saved. But there was lots of little things in our English corner. You know, we would bring a Bible out. There was times where, you know, you would show someone a Bible or you put a Bible in their hands and you'd see them pouring through it, and, you know, you find out they've never seen a Bible before. You know, or they say, I've heard about Christianity, but I've never, you know, had it explained to me. And so just, I guess, the sense that you're having an impact in people's lives from a very raw beginning for a lot of them. And you know, seeing the lights come on for some of them, and then beyond that, when they take the step of getting saved and watching them grow, that's just a precious thing.
And someone had said to me that they need to see good marriages in China specifically. And so I took that on as something that was an easier thing to think about, you know, like bring them into my home, cook for them, have them around, love them, care for them in that mothering sense, and let them see a good family, because many of them have left their families, or divorce rates are high, you know, difficult things. And so then to see them love to be in my place, feel at home, to call me Mum Kathy. They were just precious to have people who are now, you feel like they are family, and they have seen a couple who, you know, are together after 34 years, you know, and love each other and love our children. They know how we love our children as well, and they saw our children when they came over, how they related to us. And many people don't have that there.
Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes in like a conference report, you know, we have highlights of outstanding miracles, and they're always very exciting. We didn't see a lot of that, like healings, and things like that. It was more just that sense of people getting a revelation or those sort of things. But in terms of faith and knowing God was with you, it was very much an everyday thing. There's like everything you do, you start to realise it's by faith, because you don't know how to do it and you need God. And you get in a taxi, you're given an address that's written in Chinese on your mobile phone, you show it to the taxi driver, you use your best couple of words in Chinese to say, do you know this place? And he kind of goes, yeah, and then you drive. And you don't know where you're going to go or what it looks like when you get out, and things work. So like everyday life was just this very exciting journey of faith, like finding out how to do basic, simple things, and you just need God. When we started there, I was like, how am I going to meet people? And I just went to the university and started saying hello to see if anyone answered in English. And God moves, and he brought us in contact with people that were connected with other people, and you just see God. So those kind of memories and just that living by faith it's a great...
And so just on that point, how many times did you rest back on that initial call of God as you worked through culture shock moments and difficulties of setting into a nation that you're not familiar with? How many times do you go back, no, we're called, I know God wants us here, and working through those taxi rides and buying shopping and getting things? How many times do you have to go back, God wants us here?
Yeah, it's like your anchor rope, you check the anchor and see that you're still tied, because there is times where, I wouldn't like you to think that we just drifted through in faith knowing that, everything will work out. Sometimes you're going nuts. You're like, how can this be? Like, what are we going to do? And you don't know, and you don't know how it's going to play out or how long this journey is going to go. Not the taxi journey, but the whole life in China. And what you've got to hold on to is that one steady thing, that God called us here and we don't have all the answers and we're not the experts, but God has called us. And so, that's your bedrock. That's your, the anchor's still there.
After 6.5 years of being missionaries, you're at a service and it becomes very apparent that your time there is ending. How did that all play out?
It was a Sunday afternoon service. We were just about to start. Kathy had gone downstairs and we had been locking the door because there was some security concerns. And then I was about to switch my phone to silent. And I looked at my phone, and when I looked back up, the room was filled with police, uniformed and plainclothes, and security guards, and they're holding phones up to video, and they're starting to get people separated and everything, and everything just went slow motion. Wow. And it was like, it's that day. Because while that was very confronting, it wasn't surprising. We kind of knew that it could happen any time, but there was like, they had come with a large number of people. I think they were suspecting a much bigger group than what we were at the time, and they just came in and filled the room, started separating people and photographing everything. We had song service ready to go, so all of our best ideas about being discreet and plan B and what if the police come, that just all went out the window. But one of the big security issues there is we knew that would sort of be the end for us in China, but you don't want it to be the end for our whole fellowship. So, you want to have your phone fairly clear of anything that will incriminate any other missionaries or any other Christians around. So you want to sort of contain it to, it's just what they get here today is all it's going to be. And so, I had my phone in my hand and I'm thinking, I've got phone messages on WhatsApp and, what do I do? Phone in the pocket, I don't want them to see it. And while I thought about that, I knew WhatsApp was going to be the problem for me, that there was contacts and conversations in there. And I put my thumb on the WhatsApp icon and thought, what am I going to do? And I discovered that when you hold the icon down, it's got to uninstall up in the top corner. I was like, thank you, Jesus. And I just slid my finger up and uninstalled that. And I thought, good, that's done for me. But for Kathy, it was a little bit of a bigger issue.
Well, I turned around and the room started filling, and it was with police. And it was a very surreal moment, slow motion kind of moment, as then I look over and see my phone on a chair. And I quietly walk to the chair and get my phone. Then it's, what do I do with the phone? Put it in my pocket or the bag. I put it in my pocket. And then I sat down and the shaking began, and I was very nervous at that moment. And the issue with the phone was that it had things on it, that photos and that, and I could never uninstall them, and I could never take them off because I had 17,000 photos and 3,000 videos. And knowing this moment could happen sometime, just the week before, I'd cried out to God and said, I cannot do this. I cannot get all my photos off the phone. Too sentimental. The computer was not taking all the photos off, and I couldn't go through them all. I just cried out and said, you're going to have to do something, God, because I cannot let them have my phone and my computer or anything like that. And I'm just going to trust you because you know me, God. I can't do this. But what I also did know was that if ever we were taken into a situation, I trusted God that He said, don't worry about what you'll say or what you'll do. Holy Spirit will be with you. And so I knew that, but this phone just bothered me. But anyway, at that moment, the police asked me, lovely lady, and she said, so do you have your passport on you? No. Do you have a photo of your passport? No, because I couldn't give her my phone. And then she said, we'll have to take you to the station. I said, okay. So I go downstairs, but by then I had to go to the toilet. It was just really bad. And I said, I have to go to the toilet. She said, I'll come in with you. I said, no. Anyway, I leave my bag out here. And I gave my bag to a suggie. And she said, okay. And I went in. And I was grateful at that time I had the phone in my pocket. But in there, I couldn't uninstall. I was shaking so much. I couldn't uninstall. I'm like, God, what do I do? Where can I put my phone? What can I do? And all I could do was write a message, police, to the kids so that someone would be praying. And then I saw a tile that was ajar behind the toilet, always been like that. And I thought maybe I could just drop the phone there because they would look here, maybe not there. So turned my phone down, aeroplane mode, switched it off, pulled the tile out, put it down there, shut the tile, a jar, it could only go that far, and then said, God, that's it. That's all I can do. And this took a few minutes, and then knocking on the door, like I can't, Anyway, finally I left, I got my bag, and a peace came on me. I knew, if they found it, they found it, but I did everything I could. Yeah. And I went to the station with this lady.
How many hours did they interview you for?
5 hours, probably at least.
4 or 5 hours.
And they're coming in and out. So by then you've got the exit entry police are behind me, listening, but the people who were questioning me, not sure exactly who they were, but anyway, they were doing the questioning at that time. And it was difficult. And mostly I was saying, ask my husband. But the whole time there, I didn't want to be nervous, shaking, or let them know any of that. And I really had to pray and say, God, help me, even with opening a drink bottle, that I wasn't shaking. And there was a peace. Wow. And God gave me a peace. And the lady taking the notes, she's shaking. And anyway, at the end of it all, signed my life away, But then this lady who had originally seen me, gone in the police car with me, had sat behind me, she then had to tell us we had to leave the country. And, okay. And then it ended up just being her there and me. And I just looked at her and I said, thank you for being kind. I know this is you doing your job, but thank you for being kind. It's really helped me. She had a lovely soft voice, and anyway, she just looked at me at that moment and said, I sat behind you the whole time, and you were different, you were calm, you had a real peace about you, an inner peace. Wow. And I don't have that. And that moment was just God there showing me, I'm with you. And I'd always known, we sacrifice for Christ. If I'd been put in prison, killed anything. That's what we gave our lives for. But we actually knew in China they really just kick you out at the moment. In the future, who knows what will happen. But at that moment, it was, God, you've been faithful the whole way, from the beginning through to this moment. You're there. You're with me.
So in light of that story of God's peace in a very dark hour, Pastor Pat, how do you process the last 6.5 years, the door suddenly closing? What do you see in the future of the next 5, 10, 15 years of our church in Hangzhou and the Chinese fellowship?
Yeah, obviously it was an abrupt end. Like I said, it wasn't unsuspected in that, that could have happened any time during our time in China, but it did come to an unanticipated end and leaves you wondering, well, what was that all about? What was that 6.5 years about? And really, I think, for me, it comes down to answering the call of God, In terms of the results and what happens next, I can't guess the future. I have thoughts about it, I can see some things that will need to happen. But when I look back, the investment that our fellowship has made in China, the Sydney churches, they're giving, they're praying, I understand you can look and say, well, that all came to an end, but it didn't. There is a future. There is, the missionaries have been cleared out of China largely. We still have 3 foreign missionaries there in China, so continue to pray for them. But things are not as they were. And but what has happened during that open period of China, there is couples in cities. There are churches and groups that have hung together, and since we've left, there's been people that were attending church with us that have scattered, but there's also a core of incredibly faithful servants of Jesus Christ who are trying to hold it together in an uncertain time. And I believe God has just placed people in those places all around China, and really it's going to be in the future, with the way things are going in the geopolitical scene, it's going to be up to the Chinese Christians to stand up, to pastor churches, to hold together in unity. It's going to be up to them. And there are tremendous Chinese pastors that God has raised up across China. And one of the outcomes has been that the Chinese churches, or the Chinese fellowship, has had to become indigenized. We have a Chinese leader taking leadership of the Chinese churches. And so, that's the upside. And so we really need to continue to pray for China and for the Christians in China, because in a sense, it's like, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to run with what you've got. And I was so proud, even in our home group here in Parramatta the other night, where in lockdown we had the Zoom meeting, and some of our folks from China zoomed in on that meeting and participated and spoke, and I was so proud of them. And God's good, and we just simply need to answer the call that God calls us with, and be open to do whatever it is that He asks us to do. And of course there's always questions about, well, what was that about, and was it a waste of time, or what happens in the future? That's up to God, but our fellowship in China, God's got a solid foundation, and we're going to pray and continue to believe that's going to be built upon in the future.
Hello, brothers and sisters, this is Liam. I became Christian on 2020, last year, April. At that time, due to the COVID time, I don't have job, I just graduate. I know God exists and I read the Bible, but when I grow up, I don't want God to come to my life. I reject God. I say, don't come to my life. I want freedom. So my life is... So later I just follow my heart. I have long hair before, but later when I became Christian, I just find that God can change me. Like the Bible can totally change the people, because I experienced the thing. So later, before I smoke, once I became Christian, I stopped smoking. I don't worry about other things, so I stopped smoking. And a lot of things, God, little by little, transformed me. Like my heart, and I have trust in Him more and more. Like before, we are strangers, we don't know each other. Later we can be a friend. I can trust him. I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful what God have done in my life and gave me this job. Now my work is very good. And also before I became Christian, I faced a lot of debts. So now a lot of problem fixed. And also my girlfriend became Christian, my sister became Christian, and also use God's love to influence the people around my side. Pat and Kathy now go back to Australia, and in Sydney now, we want to build God's kingdom in China, also in this city in Hangzhou.
I'm going to have a short testimony of like what happened to the church of Hangzhou, China. Our pastor Pat. First, I was born in a Baptist church, and all I have ever seen was the Christians' weakness and failures and the coverage of their failure too. I understand, the Christianity is kind of a spiritual drug. Until the most recent time, I unexpectedly began to experience the victories of my own Christian life. And more I realized that my heart was actually changed, and it became more and more similar to our pastor. That was not only me, but also I see the same thing happen to other Christians, my brothers and sisters too. I think if God can change me, He can change other people's too. And well, that is not going to happen without the sacrifice of our pastor and his family, and the church supported him behind. Well, of course I have to say thank you. That's all for all of these, and thanks God. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Usagi from Hangzhou Church, and I'm glad to be here to share my testimony with you guys tonight. Frankly speaking, I didn't have so many feelings, or I felt really excited at the moment when I got saved. It's just a little voice. It's after Pat's preach and after Pat did the altar call, it's just a little voice in my heart say, oh, I want to become a Christian. Oh, I want to know more about that. And I raised up my hand. And at that point, I even didn't know what become a Christian mean. And then day by day, and I started to attend the church regularly. And it's my privilege to be able to get involved into different revival events, and then being able to listen to different people's testimony, how God, just work in their life and what God has done to their life. And then by the grace of God, and then life is getting better, and I just got married and then have a really cute baby, my firstborn baby. And then I even got a super, just a job for me. It's like you can't imagine that you could get such a part-time job in China, and everything looks perfect. And then dang, just one day just a bunch of policemen came into our building, and then everything has changed again. In the beginning, I was super frustrated. I just can't stop asking God, why it has to be like this. Even though I know that Pat and Kathy, one day they had to go back to Australia, but I just can't stop asking God, why have to be now? When Pat and Kathy, they went back to Australia on that Sunday, Pastor Watch just gave a preaching about this thing happened in our church, and Pastor Watch just said, do you think that such things surprise God? No, God knows exactly what He is doing. And then at that point, I just started to think about and just try to think back all those things that happened in the past of couple years. And then the more I just try to connect it, those things happen, and the more I can see or clear that why God has to do this. And then I have to say that I had a really big comfort at that moment, because I know that it's true that God knows exactly what He is doing. We are now doing those online meetings and every week, and it's such an encouragement for me that brothers and sisters, they still, keep staying together and encouraging each other together. Yes, after all those things that happen, and then I just want to keep serving God, because I know that God knows exactly what He is doing, and I believe that God will have a perfect plan for me. And I also believe that at the end of this race, of this road, that we will have a final or eternal victory in our life. That's all. God bless you. Thank you.
So there you have it. There's fruit to your account. We have accomplished what we set out to do there in China. In God closing that door, God has opened many other opportunities in the world. We have conference coming up in just a few short months. I have no doubt that God is speaking to couples through this message, through this video, and by the Holy Ghost. God's challenging couples. We're not lacking for open doors. We're not lacking for opportunity. We don't even lack for resources. And just this one church in a third world country is just the start of many other opportunities. Let God speak to you about what He wants you to do in the months to come.